The Alternative Experience.
The Alternative Experience.
The Alternative Experience.
Hey everybody, Nikki here. Welcome to another episode of Alternative Experience. So, 10 years of breathwork advice in under, I'm going to say 15 minutes. I'm going to challenge my long form ass. So most people jump straight into a breathwork practice, and it's often recommended to them by their favorite sort of online influencer. And they just assume that it's going to be the magic cure to all of their ills. But after 10 years working as a breathwork instructor, there are nuances which I believe really are vital to be considered before even a breath has been taken. So I thought I would put this podcast episode together just to tell you the things I believe you need to know before you begin, and the reason why. I won't just say these are the things you need to do, but I'll tell you why you need to do them. Okay, so the first thing I believe you need to master before anything is you need to build awareness. So you need to become aware of how you are breathing throughout your normal waking day. And this is to understand what nervous system state is most dominant, which one is giving you the most jip. Okay, so to do this, I recommend that initially you might need to set some reminders or put post-it notes all over the place. But I need you to try and check in with the way that you are breathing at least 3 to 4 times per day, with the goal being as many times as you possibly can. So when you become aware of your breath, you become aware of the present moment. So you're not thinking about emails, you're not thinking about bills, the fight you had earlier. You know, these things only exist in the future or in the past. The part of your brain that's going to activate when you become sort of like introspective, you know, focusing on your breath, that's going to bring you into the present, and it's going to give you the space to think clearly, creatively, and rationally. So what happens when you turn your awareness inwards and into the present? This allows you to really begin paying attention to your thoughts, your emotional state, your nervous system state, and your worries. And it's going to boost that introspection. The reason that's important is there's now an absolute library full of studies that actually show that people with high introspective awareness, they make better long-term choices and decisions. They act with a lot less impulse, and they're generally even happier. So make a commitment to spend 2 to 5 minutes every day just to check in and build awareness of how you are breathing and how you are feeling. And I want you to try and pay special attention and focus in on how the air enters and leaves your body. Is it coming in through the nose or the mouth? How deep are your breaths? Do they feel nourishing and calming? Or do they feel laborious and triggering? How does your belly expand as you inhale? Do you breathe into your chest or your shoulders? You know, do you feel like you're suffocating? Now, don't get me wrong, this may seem a little boring, and no doubt during your practice, you are going to be pulled back into the high stress monkey mind of the world around you, but that is part of the process. That is what true meditation is. So for anybody that hasn't meditated before or has tried it and it didn't work for them, meditation is not just about quieting the mind and reaching absolute zen. Everybody that tries it and doesn't reach that gives up because they think they can't do it. It's actually about trying to do this, but spending more time and attention on realizing when that monkey mind has taken back control, and then going again and getting better and better at controlling that mind that goes off and starts thinking about your worries and your to-do list. Now, the result of regularly practicing this is you're going to become much calmer. You're going to feel more energized and focused. Your creativity will go into overdrive, and you will become far better at identifying how you breathe when you feel a certain way. And once you do that, that's when you'll find out which part of the nervous system is most dominant and which is the problem that you need to be dealing with. And that takes me to step 2. Step 2, I've put mindset, but it's not mindset at all. The second important thing that you need to know before you practice any breath technique is the two different nervous system states and their relationship to how you breathe. Okay, and they will actually dictate what your mindset is, which is probably why I called it mindset. So you may wake up every day, okay, and practice a technique you saw on the internet. However, if that technique does not match the nervous system imbalance that you are trying to improve, you will be making things worse. I use this example. It's akin to throwing gas on a fire. Okay, so I see this all the time, especially with things like the Wim Hof method. Okay, he uses excitatory techniques. Now, that's not to say his methods are not highly effective, especially when they're used correctly. It's just to make the point that not every breathwork technique is suitable for every single occasion. So you need to understand those two different parts of the nervous system. So if you are feeling low on energy, if your issues are low mood, poor focus, lethargy, or even depression, you are going to benefit, at least in the short term, by practicing high-paced excitatory breathing techniques, as these focus on really firing up your nervous system into what I call a go state. Okay? Now, like I say, it may be that you benefit from these ongoing, but it would definitely be that the start of your sort of practice, these would be more beneficial to wake you up and give you more energy so you can actually start your recovery in your process. However, if you are anxious, agitated, angry, frustrated, feeling overwhelmed, boxed in, you are going to benefit much more from slow, calm, deep breathing exercises. Okay? So some of this may seem like I'm nitpicking to obviously the unqualified mind, but it's quite literally the difference between using the breath to reverse your imbalance or potentially making it 10 times worse. So once you have this understanding, you're going to find that you naturally begin to gravitate to the correct breathing technique based on how you are feeling without really even thinking about it. So if you yawn before a meeting, you're going to instinctively know that you need to speed up your breath. You need to rev that nervous system up. And in times of stress or agitation, you're going to naturally slow your breath down. It's all about building the knowledge which will lead directly to that increased awareness. So you'll find that using breath therapeutically throughout your day, in response to how you are actually feeling, is far, far more effective over time than doing any kind of dedicated, specific 5-minute practice every morning. So it doesn't really work that way. Therapeutic breathing is by far the most effective way that you can, as I say, manage your nervous system state. So that brings me to number 3. Probably the most important thing to know about breathing, but when we're talking about actually taking up intentional breathing, I would do it in this order. And that is what we call diaphragmatic breathing. Now, the diaphragm, it's the most important muscle that most of us don't even know exists. Now, that diaphragm is a muscle, and it sits just below and attached to the bottom of your rib cage. You can't see it's out of camera at the moment, but it moves like an upside down jellyfish or an upside down parachute in the fact that it does this, pulls down. It's the main muscle for your breathing, yet as much as 97% of the population are not using it at all. So it's become atrophied. It doesn't even know how to do its job. So each time we breathe, the diaphragm is supposed to expand downward from the rib cage like that, into the belly, allowing the lungs to pull air deep down towards something called alveoli. And that is basically tiny little air sacs. We've got about 480 million of them. And they represent the end of the respiratory line. Okay, and what they do is they deliver O2 molecules to waiting red blood cells, which then go off to oxygenate various parts of the human system. Now, the problem is most people are breathing far too shallow, mostly in their shoulders. And as such, that diaphragm has become completely redundant, as have the alveoli. So we might be saturated in oxygen. We're completely surrounded by it. But how much of that precious oxygen is actually making its way around your body? We simply lost the ability to breathe correctly, and it causes what I call a near undetectable low-grade stress to everything that you do. During my 10 years, I would say it's the hardest thing that new students of breathwork have to overcome, because they are in effect actually breathing backwards. So you ask somebody to take a big deep breath in, what they do is they pull their tummies in and raise their shoulders. When they inhale, so they go like this, and they're pulling their tummy in. It should be expanding the belly. But one of the most important things to focus on when you start breathwork is to master that diaphragmatic breathing. Not only will it strengthen your diaphragm, but over time it's also going to reawaken that muscle as your default breathing muscle. So you can always sign up to one of my sort of breathwork programs, but there is an exercise I want to show you today that you can use to develop your diaphragm. Now, it's always hard to do these things on podcasts, but I'll do my best. I'll talk you through it, and then I'll give you an example of one of these sort of breathing exercises. But what it's going to be, it's an adaptation of something called the perfect yogic breath, which is basically a 3-stage breath where you first inhale into your belly, into that diaphragm, and then when you're full, you expand slightly into the ribs and then into the shoulders. So it's a 3-phase: belly, ribs, chest, and shoulders. But this is going to have a little twist, okay? So, like I say, first we want you to focus on breathing deep into the belly, breathe until you're full, okay? But then when you're full, I want you to give one more short, sharp, just as kind of like a little powerful top up, kind of like a, okay, just so you're at the top. And then we're going to practice our first breath hold. This will be around about 15 seconds with our lungs full, okay? So I'll count you through that, and I'll tell you when you need to go back into the breath. But I want you to focus in that 15 seconds on really pushing the breath downwards toward your belly. And I want you to create what I call a little bit of inter-abdominal pressure. So it's not going to be uncomfortable, but you'll feel yourself pushing that air down to the bottom of the belly. Okay, and at the end of the 10 to 15 seconds, okay, because I want you to keep that tension throughout that sort of 10 to 15 seconds, but we're then going to do an exhale. Now, initially, it's going to start very slow. We're going to resist and constrict it. And then as the breath starts to come out, we're going to expand and let it all out. And again, at the bottom of that exhale, I want, again, just another quick fire the tummy in, short, sharp exhale, just to take a little bit more air out. And then I want you to hold again. And with this hold, obviously, you're going to have empty lungs. You're going to have like what I call the pangs of breath hunger. And what I kind of want you to do is imagine they were like a wave and you're riding the wave. So as this little pang of, oh, I need to take a breath is happening, just for a few seconds, I want you to ride it. Okay, I want you to resist it. Not for too long, because we're going to do more than one round. So we're going to do sort of 3 to 5 in this. Normally we would. But yeah, I just want you to sort of play with that. And the longer you do that and the more you do that, the more sort of strength you're going to bring back into that diaphragm muscle. Okay, and it won't take you very long for you to realize that you're now starting to do that in your default, in your sort of automatic breathing during the day. Okay, so let me just do a quick example of that for you again. I won't hold for 15 seconds, and again, the exhale I won't ride for long. It's just to give you an example. But inhale. So, inhale fully, 3-phase, one more top up, hold for 15 seconds, exhale slowly and expand. At the bottom, another quick, short, sharp exhale, and then hold and ride that. And do that sort of 3 to 6 times as often as you can, just as a little bit of a way of reminding that diaphragm that it's the one that's supposed to be doing the job right there, okay? But I just really want you to realize this isn't a competition, so I don't want you doing it to the point where you're passing out. Again, you're not competing with anybody. This is literally just, it's like going to the gym. It's like doing reps, okay? You don't want to go too heavy and end up ripping a muscle. You just want to start doing this as a little exercise. And as I say, it won't take very long for that diaphragm, number one, to strengthen, because at the moment it's been completely useless. It hasn't been used at all. And we want to rebuild that, but we also want to reignite that memory so it becomes the default breathing muscle when you're taking your breath in your subconscious. Okay, it's going to feel uncomfortable. And you will have that urge to breathe during that sort of empty breath hold. And that's the thing that we're trying to ride. Okay, just imagine it's like a little wave in your stomach that's creating that sort of abdominal discomfort. Ride it a little bit like a wave and then go back in and do a couple. So I hope you found this informative, first and foremost. I do believe truly in the power of breathwork, and I do want to spread as much knowledge as I possibly can. But if you'd like to know anything about any of my programs, or you want any more information on what we've gone through in this show, just reach out anytime. You can DM me, you can comment on this on whichever platform you're watching it, or you can book a discovery call. I will put the link in the description. But until the next show, guys, thank you for tuning in. The Alternative Experience.
The Alternative Experience.
The Alternative Experience.